All right, we got an article from Breitbart here, and this perfectly encapsulates why we need to get the fuck rid of every single establishment Democrat in office. Now, I say establishment specifically because it is the establishment that has been aligning themselves with China for years now, decades now. And we have Diane Feinstein praises China, claiming it's growing into a respectable nation. China is growing into a respectable nation. We're talking about a nation that has over 1 million people enslaved in concentration camps with the Uyghur Muslims, and then they send the ethnic Chinese over. I think they're called Han. I think they're Han. Into the Xinjiang province to sleep with the wives of the men they've thrown into concentration camps to breed the Muslim Uyghurs out of existence. They also have the Falun Gong, a religious group that live very clean lives that they are harvesting for their organs. They're running organ harvesting. All of their technology is developed by stealing other people's technologies. They enslave millions upon millions of people. They have zero human rights. They are, you can just go on and on about how China is anything but a respectable nation. When the coronavirus outbreak happened, they were welding people into their apartments and just leaving them there to die. They do not care about their people. In what world? We could continue to go on. We could talk about how they, now that they're attacking India on the Indian border in Western China. They're trying to take Taiwan. They've been, they want to claim Taiwan for themselves. Don't get me started on Hong Kong. They were supposed to have 50 years of semi-sovereignty in Hong Kong, and they're just like, nah, fuck that. We're gonna take your money. We're gonna take your rights away. Fuck that. The Chinese are terrible. They are literally the Nazi regime of our day, and Diane Feinstein is saying it's growing into a respectable nation. In fact, the Chinese make the Nazis look tame in comparison. And that takes a lot, because the Nazis were fucking awful. But if you just by body count alone, since the Chinese Communist Revolution, it's disgusting. So Senator Dianne Feinstein praised China on Thursday, saying the country is growing into a respectable nation and that the country has pulled tens of millions of people out of poverty. Yeah, because they enslave hundreds of millions. And if you're not living in one of the major cities, you're starving. The gall that this woman has to try to gaslight us and say that they have pulled tens of millions of people out of poverty, sure, maybe they have, but only people who are willing to do the bidding of the Chinese government and basically let their companies be run by the Chinese government. Meanwhile, if you're not in the inn with the Chinese government, you are slave labor to them. That's why we get all of our products from them so cheap. Is because they can run slaves. They have 1.4. No, what was it? They got 200 million citizens, 1.2 billion slaves, something like that. If you were to look at it that way, I kind of pulled those numbers out of my ass, so don't quote me on that. It's just making a point, just making an overarching point. So Feinstein's remarks were made during a Senate Judiciary Committee meeting debate on a bill that would allow individuals to sue the Chinese government for its mishandling and cover-up of COVID-19. I'm not sure how you're going to sue the Chinese government. The only way that I could see that working out, which is basically if the American government paid it and then took that off of their tab with China and said, charge that to the game, bitches. Which I think I don't think we should do that, because I think we should already take everything that we owe to China, all of our debt to China, and tell them to charge it to the game. That should just be the running line from Donald. I could just see Donald Trump right now. The Chinese come to Donald Trump and say, "Oh, you'll need to make good on your payments. Do not make your monthly payment. Charge it to the game." My impressions are terrible, but yeah, I can just see it. I can just see Trump doing it, and it's hilarious. They should not. We shouldn't owe China anything after this, because they were absolutely responsible. They covered it up. They disappeared doctors that tried to whistleblow what was actually going on with COVID-19. They absolutely lied about everything. They have the WHO in their pockets, and they had the WHO lying about it on behalf of the Chinese government. If it wasn't for China, we wouldn't even know what COVID-19 was right now. It would just be something that fucked China up for a little while. But, they got over it because they just welded everybody into their damn apartments. Or killed anybody who made them look bad over it. Oh, but that's the respectable nation that China's becoming. And, I remember, Diane Feinstein's from San Francisco, and San Francisco's sister city is Shanghai. I think it was the first sister city between the United States and China, and she's just been so proud of that connection ever since. And that's, so many of these Democrat establishment types, and it's probably not just Democrats, to be honest. There's probably some Republicans involved in this too, that have been selling us off to China for decades now. I mean, we had Hunter Biden go into China and leave with $1.5 billion account. And Joe Biden's not, Joe Biden has talked about how great China is. No. It's because the only reason these people are talking about how great China is because they're making a mint, selling us off to China. This Diane Feinstein really needs to be looked into for this. We really need to look into what her deals with China actually are. And I think I read, I shouldn't say anything. Because I'd have to look up the proof on some financial handlings of Feinstein and her husband with China. I think they made quite a bit of money in China, and so of course they're gonna cover it up. Just like fucking LeBron James, punk motherfucker ass, won't say shit about China. Same with Mark Cuban. All these billionaires, all these people that are in the establishment, that are these superstar celebrity people that are all part of this club that love China, will not criticize China, no matter how terrible they actually are. And they've gone from not just not criticizing them to openly praising them. Enough of that. Diane Feinstein has no place representing Americans when she's clearly representing the Chinese government in Washington, D.C. Some sort of investigation needs to happen, and it should not come up empty. We hold China as a potential trading partner. Yeah, they trade us cheap goods, and we trade them all of our infrastructure and all of our jobs. We hold China as a potential trading partner. We need to cancel all of our trading ties with China as quickly as possible. Now, I understand that they've got us by the balls in some ways, but we got to figure out the best path out of that relationship, because they have been milking us dry, bleeding us dry for decades. As a country that has pulled tens of millions of people out of poverty in a short period of time, you got to ask how they did that. What is it? What is it? The Foxconn factory. They had to actually put suicide nets to stop people from just jumping off the roof of the building because working conditions were so terrible and these people had no future in front of them. It's because they use slavery. When you have 1.4 billion people in a country, and it's pretty easy to get 10, 20, 30 million of them out of poverty when you allow them to enslave the other 1.3 billion people. It's pretty easy to get those out, to get the slavers out of poverty by allowing them to use slavery. But does she even completely ignores that? But you think she doesn't know? You better believe she knows. She doesn't care. poverty in a short period of time, and as a country growing into a respectable nation amongst other nations. Yeah, I mean, compared to what? Actually, I don't think the only one that you could say is North Korea might be worse than them. But even North Korea is basically a satellite vassal state of China. China controls North Korea. I can't name a single other nation that is worse than China. Maybe some of the Middle Eastern nations. I mean, Libya actually has open slave markets, same as if it was 1680 or something. They have open slave markets in Libya. Those might be the only examples of nations which they might be growing respectable in comparison to. And even that, I don't think so. I don't think so. Because China scales bigger than any of them. Their evil scales bigger than any of it. And she says, I deeply believe that. Feinstein deeply believes that China is becoming a respectable nation amongst other nations. No, they're becoming a more powerful nation amongst other nations. That does not mean they are respectable. The Nazis were powerful in the 1930s and early 1940s. Didn't make them respectable. The USSR, very, very powerful nation, or conglomerate nation of slave states, vassal states. Not respectable. Just because they're growing in power, and just because you're able to make a mint off of their atrocities, does not mean that they are growing more respectable. It means that you are becoming increasingly disrespectable. Feinstein also said depriving China of foreign sovereignty immunity would be a huge mistake, insinuating that China should not be held responsible for the spread of the deadly coronavirus, which has taken the lives of more than 150,000 Americans. Yes, they should! Yes, they should! Because they lied. They could have covered it up. They could have contained it. They did everything in their power to ensure that it spread beyond their borders and became a global pandemic. They could have put a pin in this thing so quickly, but it was not in their interest to. They don't mind sacrificing however many of their people it kills. They don't give a shit about human life. But here in America, where we do care about human life, we had to pay the cost. So, how do you think that they should not be held accountable? I'm sure according to her, it's all Donald Trump. The California senator's remarks were also made amid reports revealing several cases of human rights abuses from the Chinese government. I think they left out the word million. Several million cases of human rights abuses from the Chinese government. In 2018, it was alleged that a Chinese spy posed as a staffer at Feinstein's San Francisco office and served as the California Democrats' driver, Asian American community liaison, and stand-in for the center at Chinese consulate events. I remember when this happened. I remember when it came out that this guy worked for Feinstein for like 20 years. You think she didn't know that he was a Chinese spy? I think she knew damn well. I think she allowed it, and I think she has been one of the biggest perpetrators in the selling off of America to the Chinese communist government that has no problem with slavery, death, destruction, and Diane Feinstein has no problem selling out the well-being of her own goddamn nation to them because they have made her rich personally. Fuck Diane Feinstein, put that bitch in cuffs, and send her to goddamn Gitmo. This stuff infuriates me. And we really, really need to get a handle on this. Because as Mike Pompeo said, the Chinese government has infiltrated America at every level. They have been paying off our universities to send them our scientific research, our technological discoveries. This cannot continue, and it is people like Feinstein who has allowed this, enabled this to happen for decades now. It has to end, and she needs to pay dearly for this, as well as others. But she's been one of the biggest drivers of this from day fucking one. All right, guys, as always, forgot to do my shameless plugs, so please remember to subscribe, like, share, comment. Let me know what you thought of this video, anything else you want me to talk about. Also, remember to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Parler at @RamThorburn. And if you would like to contribute to the channel, there are links to my Patreon, PayPal, and Subscribestar in the description below. Anything you do contribute does help. Even just liking and sharing this video helps. You know, I'm trying to get traction, but all the algorithms are working against me and the things I talk about on here. So it really does take you helping me out to try to get this out and try to reach more people so we can wake people up to what is really going on. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you all have a very good day.